What's up, guys? Pittsburgh White Schwartz back again with another deck tech. We're doing Japanese this week. New JP set, Zombieland Saga. I'm joined today by Paru.
Hello.
This is a deck that Paru brought up when Zombieland was still in like spoiler season, and he was like, "Oh, Saki looks pretty cool. Build a deck around Saki," and I agreed. And we both started testing it after release, and this is sort of where we landed, going back and forth, talking over different cards, bringing up with a couple other people as well. But it was Paru's main idea, so we have brought Paru on to talk about the list as we get through it. Notably, as we go to the actual list here, jump right into it, you're not going to see any level 3 Sakura, obviously, because this is Choice Pants. That was sort of like the big card in reveal season, and we are notably not running that card in lieu of the I top end because of how efficient and destructive it can be. Really easy to sculpt for, really easy to get multiple copies. Your opponent can't really interact with it with some of the other cards. But here's the main deck list. If you're just here for the deck list itself, we always have it in the description as an Encore Decks link, but you can leave us a like on the way out. That really helps us out. The first card we have is the I Runner. So it's a free runner, so you can run it anywhere. It doesn't have to have something across from it like some of the new runners do. Then it is a pay 1 sack, check up to 4. So it's your going first plussing card and a deck speed card. It's really insane, really good early game stock out as well. Good target for clean cut even after it lives, because you can cut it to the back row after your opponent tri-feels and then sack it off. Just a really amazing going first card. It's probably one of the strongest level zeros in the set for sure. I think this card's like pretty insane, like across the board. Most people agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just the fact that it can dodge combat, live back, and then if you need a stock out, you can sack it, turn it into first deck speed, or just attack with it again, clean cut it to the back row. With your Junko clean cut, which we are running 3 copies of instead of their going second card, we can summon it off our Ricky, which we'll get into later. And this one is when your other character attacks, gets 1,000 power, the clean cut, so you can get up to 4k, which is an insane clean cut. Like I just talked about with the free runner. So you have like a really great going first and a really great going second. It's not quite like Kaguya tier, but it feels almost there. How good the level 0 lineup feels to play at level 0. They don't scale as well. Well, I guess the clean cut gets pretty big into the late game with some of your other buffs that you have. So it's as relevant as clean cuts are throughout the game. You can still snipe reverses, stuff like that. But a really, really like almost oppressive level 0 lineup, having such a good runner and such a good clean cut. I do find myself saving my level 1 combo with this sometimes in the mid game. I don't know if you've experienced that, but
absolutely, with like the way that the level 1 combo can shrink cards, and we'll get to that. Your clean cut being 5k on attack, it's going to be pretty likely that you're able to snipe something with it.
Yeah, you can like actually kill your opponent's like level 1s that they leave behind. You don't have to even have an additional buff because it is 5k. A lot of things sit at 4 or 4-5 after combo. So the fact that this hits over on its own with a climax down is just really, really good for keeping your stocking around. Moving on, the Lily Ricky. We are notably only playing 3 of this card because it can get a little awkward, and that's because it's a summon Ricky. So you pay 1, clock yourself, you search your deck for a cost 0 or lower character that is your current level or lower, so you can't use it to play ahead. Place it at any slot on the stage shelf of your deck. So at level 0, you're usually going to be using this to spawn a clean cut or a card to get clean cut, whether that's one of our brainstormers or like I to sack off for deck speed the next turn if we already have our clean cut, or we summon our clean cut itself. But even though that can be a little awkward, since we have to be at level 1 already to summon a copy of a level 1 combo at this, we do get the upside of when our opponent plays a climax, we can send this card to stock, which turns itself into brainstorms, I sack check force. It's always good to have that extra stock. Free Ricky, go burr. I think it's not quite as good as the like Princess Connect one, but it's still pretty good. I think we both started out with this at 4, and I ended up cutting it back. It's just way too awkward as a summon Ricky. Summon Rickies are inherently kind of limited because you can't use them to grab level 1 cards until you're already level 1. They don't really help you sculpt for your upcoming turns, but we have other level 0s to do that. Moving on, the Lily Brainstorm. It has a climax combo that in this deck we do not play. So it is just a pay 1 self-rest Brainstorm, but it's top check 3. We really want to loop our combo, a deck that really wants to loop its level 1 combo because it can get so big and it can disrupt our opponent's field and what they're trying to do. So having a Brainstormer that can get us into additional climaxes, as well as just rip through our deck, we kind of hit this like critical mass of deck speed cards. Our level 1 combo mills, our I mills, we have an event that mills, this card can mill. You're hitting like an obnoxious level of deck manipulation where like your opponent really can't catch you in a bad spot. You have so many tools, but this is mainly here just to help us loop our level 1 combo. I think this is finally the deck where the check 3 brainstorm like gets to shine. This and the shot deck where like they just really want to recur climax constantly. So like this and climax swap, that's like your climax assurance engine along with pants.
If only Andy were here, he'd be so proud.
Yeah, he was like, this will finally see, like, it'll finally shine in some set. I think it's here.
Here it
is.
is.
This card does a lot of work. Big fan of this one. All right, next one. Trial deck card. This Junko is a drop search. It is also a global 500. A little bit of a weird profile, but it does come up. Makes your clean cut even bigger. If you only have 2 characters, it like puts your clean cut at 3/5. You cut this back. It's like not a bad card to like have sit in the back row if you're like drop searching a third combo or something like that, because at least it is some global power. But we don't have good ditch outs in Zombieland Saga. It's actually one of the most frustrating things about the set is you don't have any good way to ditch cards, notably climaxes if you're flooding. And that's the main reason we're running 2. And like combined with like the Lily Ricky, we can't really play ahead. So this is our main tool to like sculpt into our level 1 and honestly sculpt us throughout the game, because we don't have like a lot of traditional selection or combos and selective and stuff like that. So 2 copies because it's doubling as our primary ditch out. We have a lot of ways to like just cheat some stock with like the Lily basically, and a lot of our cards are costless, so like, and our finisher is fairly efficient.
And not to mention we played choice.
Yeah.
So we're getting the extra stock from triggering those.
Yeah, so we have these ways to like sort of add extra stock or use less stock later in the game when it matters. So the paying 1 just to filter out a card isn't that much of a cost to us, which is why we're on 2. All right, last 2 of here. We have this Sakura. I don't know if I've seen this in a lot of lists, but this is a card that Hansen notably played in his Summer Pockets list. This is the same as that Shizuku. Then on play pump 1500 and then on attack pump 1500. It's a really good card to clean cut in the early game. It helps your runner just kill stuff at level 0, which is really nice. And then obviously you need to get reverses at level 1, and we want to get reverses later in the game so that our Saki can like disrupt our opponent's board with its level down effect. And this card is like just 3k power on a stick, which is really, really crazy. It makes our Sakis like 11k before anything else happens. So it's a really, really good card, like just for messing with standby even more, and just keeps our Saki relevant at level 2, since we're pretty much playing it all the way up until our combo turn. If we can, we're just going to play down that choice combo. All right, into our 1-ofs 2 here. We got this Saki back row. It gives all the characters in front of us hexproof, and then you can rest it to give a character 1000 power. This is really important right now because like a lot of tap counter and defensive counters are running around that like select our characters, and then we kind of want to attack with our 1 card last because we're going to stack all our effects on it for our finisher. So if we attack with the other ones first, or we attack in such a way where this card can lock off our opponent from not tapping our finishing card, it just makes it so our opponent can't deny our finisher and can't interact with us. Only a 1-of because we only need it in very specific matchups, but the extra 1000 power makes it a not dead card otherwise, because it at least helps our Saki get over. This card's been pretty clutch for me depending on the matchup. I don't know how much you've run into it with Paru.
I haven't needed it yet, but it is there for me. Yeah.
Definitely it was nice to have like against a deck like Mushoku. Like I was playing into Choice Pants Mushoku, and I was able to stop them from being able to tap counter me in any way, which was really awesome, because the 1 card has like no events backups, and then your other 2 are like, you know, either hexproof or whatever. They can't target the other lanes, so it completely turns off tap counter no matter what. It also like turns off now, which is really funny if you have people in your scene that play Charlotte. Pretty hilarious for a costless support that it's just double 2-lane hexproof. Also protects your early play from anti-change counters, which is pretty cool. All right, last card is just the tie climax swap. We have the Lily to get us into climaxes, and this is the way to make sure we have the right one. Between the Lily and this card, I've had no problem getting the climax I need at the time that I need it. It's been more than enough climax assurance. If you find that you need more copies, you can very easily cut into one of the 2-ofs that's not the Lily Brainstorm and swap in an extra copy of this, and I think that would be fine. But that is your climax assurance engine, and it's been more than enough for the both of us as it stands. On to level 1, the Saki combo, the star of the deck. It's an on turn, gains 4k, so it's 7k on its own, 8k with the climax. And then when you reverse your opponent with a choice, as long as you have 2 or more other characters, you look at the top 4 of your deck, add a character or the 1/1 event. We're not playing the 1/1 event, but if you were, you can add it. And then you choose one of your opponent's level 1 or higher characters, and then you level that character down. So they choose a character that's 1 level or lower than that or lower from their waiting room and swap it. They can use Encore and stuff like that, but the character does hit the field, and it can break standby boards. If your opponent's playing something like Oboro and they leave you 1 reverse, you can cascade the level down events in such a way where you can kill all of their Oboros, which is pretty funny. So it's pretty good at just like like, you know, disrupting your opponent's strategy while also milling you through your deck. Like, it's a really big Minami on its own, and then it just has a insane upside to it in the right matchups. This is definitely like the card that I think drew us to this kind of deck. Do you have anything else to say about the combo, Paru?
No, not really. I do like, especially about this card, that like, because you're leveling down your opponent's card, even if you only have 2 lanes of this, your 3rd lane will, even if your opponent, you know, played their 3 level 1 combos, you're almost always going to be able to get like a profitable 3rd attack with, you know, a clean cut or even the Lily Ricky, so you get a free stock on your opponent's next turn, or just about anything else really. So just getting a single reverse can make it so that, you know, this continues going off, and that even if you have smaller characters on your turn, they're going to reverse something too. And you absolutely just stomp on, you know, any standby deck. If you get rid of one of their characters and you just start mowing through their whole field, it can be really tough for them to rebuild, especially if you follow it up with another combo turn on the next turn, which isn't even all that unlikely because of all your climax assurance.
Yeah, I think the big thing with this card against standby decks is that it's an 8k on its own. So even if your opponent is lucky enough to get like a 2/2 to front row, you level it down, they put out a 1/1, and then you challenge that card as well. So like they're not safe. They at the very least need to have like multiple backups to try to even stop this card by their first level 1 turn, which is probably asking way too much for something that's so easy for you to put together. It's just as easy for you to put together as any other level 1 combo, so multiples are kind of expected, and it's just hell for your opponents if they're playing for board. Real big fan of this combo. With the Sakura pump that we have, this card can go to, like we said, 11k, so it can, you know, just beat over early plays. If your opponent's early play spamming, you can like beat over one, level down another, cascade their whole board again, which is really cool. But yeah, really insane level 1 combo. I don't think it fits well with like any of the Sakura stuff, unfortunately, at least none that I'm seeing. So like that kind of is what pushed us toward what we played. But like after seeing a lot of the Sakura stuff get played in people's lists and stuff like that, I think I'm very happy that I played this list first, because I still haven't sleeved a Sakura, and I don't know if I'm ever going to at this point. This deck's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with this lineup also.
All right, moving on to other level 1s. Couple auxiliary cards here. We got the TD Saki. It is a 500 for each other, so 6k cross turn if we have our full board. And then it is an on-death Rize. So this is our costless ditch out. It's one of the only ones that like effective costless ditch out. The other one's a level 0 on reverse Rize. This one's a lot better just because it's a cross turn card that also on death can filter you. But yeah, just a little bit of extra deck speed, you know, again, sort of bringing us to this critical mass of like enough deck speed that like every card in our deck can mill, so that we always have a way to make sure we're in a good deck state, while also just being like a good auxiliary level 1. Very comfy card. People who have played with like the Zao, like Kirito Rize, the card's pretty similar, except it's bigger cross turn. So you have a chance to like live back and swing again, or just play over it and get the filter, whatever you need to do. Sometimes you're in those bad plays where you need that out.
Into this thing, you can just play over it to force the effect in.
Yeah. One of the big ups to playing the Saki level 1 is that we can easily play the only salvage brainstorm in this. Well, not the only salvage brainstorm. Yeah, the only tap self one. It also has the when you get a reverse, you give 500 power somewhere. Weirdly very relevant, since again you're like sort of edging over lanes all game with the Saki. The way her power works right now in the current meta, the extra 500 does like repeatedly come up against other modern decks for, you know, winning each lane and then leveling something down and winning the next, which is really cool. So yeah, good synergy with our deck with the first effect and just a self-rest salvage brainstorm. We want to recur our combo, so the salvage is even more at a premium in this kind of deck. This one's a little weird. I am not a fan of just running raw events in decks. I hate it, especially if people have seen our set reviews. I argue with Andy about it all the time, just like jamming raw events in your deck. But I have to say, for a deck that's all about zombies, they didn't get a single drop salvager, and your access to grave outside of hitting brainstorms are abysmal. Like, absolutely abysmal. So one of the only ways to have on-demand grave access is this card. This is just an Operation Tornado or a Warehouse if you play mostly English. You flip over the top 3 cards, choose a level X or lower character in your waiting room, return it to your hand. X is the number of characters that you mill. You really only need to hit 1 character on this to grab your Saki back and do your combo again. So it helps you loop your combo, it helps you mill your first deck. It's functional extra copies of your combo if they go to grave, right? When you're like taking damage or stuff at level 0. So just a really good card that does, and Andy's gonna have a shit-eating grin on his face when I say this, brings the deck together. in a meaningful way. So was wrong about this one. I was very hesitant to put this. We were playing the Zombie Master, the level 0 Kotaro, the red one, which is a really cool summon from Grave effect. But we do have CIP effects that we want to use, and you know, the extra mill. This just ended up being better than the Zombie Master in almost every way. Funny.
Also, the text box is at the top.
Yes, it is.
To this card.
You do get to run a wonky text card. Level 2. So this one's a little weird. It's 2/1 Clock Bomb. Yes, I know this card is blue. A little weird. But it is a full field, and you play it. You can get a stock from your grave, so it plays like a 2/0. You play it for a full board, and then when you reverse, it's a Clock Bomb, even though it's blue. Color just doesn't mean anything anymore, I guess. It is a Clock Bomb. It's not a mistranslation. It's Clock Bomb. But the reason we're running this is because of the Lily early play. We'll get into it when we get to that card, but it turns on an like line of text on the Lily that you otherwise probably wouldn't use, and that's been like repeatedly meaningful in the meta because with a lot of standby and a lot of early play spam stuff. So we'll get to that when we get to the Lily early play. But it's like a old Adachi. This is what people played before there were 1/1s.
Like once your opponent hits like a certain amount of power at level 2, you don't really have like any way to remove it. So, you know, bombing those kinds of cards is pretty much your only out because your early play is pretty small in its own.
Yeah, and it's like this is free. So
yeah, exactly.
We are running the anti-change backup as opposed to the memory kick backup or something else. There aren't many options for defensive counters in Zombieland. So the fact that our top end is pretty stock light, we only really need 5 to go off. But the way it works, we do have the ability to actually play this sack anti-change counter. Pay 3 overall, sack a character, has a little bit of extra utility as a sack counter. But we can actually freely use this. So like, it's not just like an empty threat to grab this card or something. Your opponent probably does have to expect you to be able to use it. Unlike other decks where if they're playing anti-change counter, it's more of like a threat because a lot of sets have like Ditch 2, and like Ditch 2 is just way too much for decks to do these days. But the fact that we have choice in our deck, like we have the Lily that's like going to stock, our cards are generally not using stock for their effects, and then our finisher is stock light, we can actually just use this and get some like, you know, money counters at level 2, which is always nice.
If you use this to sack the level 1 Saki on death card, this also becomes a mill counter.
Yo, that's hype.
Yeah.
That is
you can
hype.
use this as a Leafa and an anti-change counter at the same time.
That's broken.
It's kind of cute, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't even think about that. I haven't had a chance to do that yet. I don't think I've ever had.
Either,
yeah,
it's cool.
But it is something you can do. So moving on to the early play, the Lily early play is a 2 or less. Gets -1 level, and then gets 1,000 for each of your back rows, so it'll sit at 10k. And then when it's played from the hand of the stage, you choose one of the following 3 effects and perform it. So I'm going to read the last 2 first, which is that you can just heal. So if you need to heal down, you have that. You can buff your entire board by 3k, which is really awesome. If you're trying to recur a Saki combo, you need to hit over like a board of early plays. You can just drop this down and give like this giant global buff and break your opponent's board again. Like if you haven't had a chance with your Saki before that. So it's like another board breaker. And then this is the reason why we're running 2 of that Sakura 2/1 is it turns online this 3rd line of text that you would otherwise not use, which is a drop to 1 card, choose a cost 1 or lower character in your hand, put it at any slot on the stage. And because that 2/1 Sakura, when you play it with 4 or more characters on board, gives you a stock, what you're getting is for 1 stock, you're getting a early play and a bomb for 1 stock, and you draw a card. So for the same cost as like a heal to stock, right? Or no, it actually goes even because you draw. You play 1 card to the board, and then you draw and you summon another card, and then you clear one of your opponent's cards. So it's very efficient. If you're like at 2-0, 2-1, maybe 2-2, there's not really a lot you have to do to heal. Your deck's in a good state, and you're just going to sit on it. You fill your board, you play this down, you summon the thing, get like 2 bodies and a draw for 1 stock, and then you just clear your opponent's board and go next. It's felt really good just having that line of text be an option because the cantrip is really nice. We don't have any other like cards in the deck that cantrip really, like level 3s, they're all heals. So just having that extra line of text be relevant. It is kind of similar in what it does to the last effect, like buff your whole board by 3k. But sometimes your opponents have cards that like need hard removed. Like if you're playing against Slime and they're playing like the Shizus or whatever, like that's something that you need to keep in mind, that like the fact that you could just clear your opponent's Shizu to clock, it won't be on the board anymore. They can't hand encore it. But yeah, that's an idea that Paru and I stole from Hansen actually. We were just looking at like Zombieland decks, yeah.
Why is he playing 2 of this card?
Yeah, but it does turn on this line of text on the Lily, and it's actually been really sick. So shout out to Hansen for that one.
Hansen's got 2 shots.
Yeah, he has.
Andy has 2.
Yep.
This is their episode.
Moving on to the finisher, the eye finisher. So on play, or when it's summoned by the Junko, you heal. So 4 healers in your deck. And then when you play the pants, and you have 2 or more other characters, you choose one of your characters. So it can be any character, including yourself, and it gains 1,000 1,000 power and the following ability, which is on reverse, pay 1, ditch any card, burn your opponent for 3. So a really good rate. On reverse, you'd think is kind of cringe, but we have this really cool support card that makes it not, especially because we can stack multiples of this on one lane. If our opponent isn't presenting any sort of threat, or they aren't a set that has access to any sort of counter, for 6 stock, we get triple finisher, which is 6 instances of 3 if our opponent has a board, which is like really cool. It's really like cheap rate for a lot of instances of damage, where like otherwise, you know, like restanders are much more expensive than that. This is just burns, and we only need to get 1 reverse to get all those to go off. And the fact that we can stack them means that if our opponent is going to live and there's no way for us to kill them, we can just choose to not do the effect, and after we've healed down, try to go for our opponent the next turn, and just save our resources. But that support card is this Junko, which is if you have 4 or more other characters, it gets 5,000 power, and during battles involving this, your opponent can't play events or backups. So they can't play a money counter, they can't play bounce counters, they can't play a tap counter on another lane or something like that. So you're always going to get that reverse, you're always going to get those effects to go off. And then to make it even better, when you play it, you can pay 1 and summon one of the eyes to field from grave, and then you also get that heal off the eye. So this is the main way that our opponent really can't interact with our finisher at all. Between the Junko and the Saki X-Proof support, there's basically nothing our opponent can do to stop us from doing the effect, unless you unfortunately misorder your attacks or misplace your X-Proof support and you get a card tapped or something like that, or bounced. But there's basically no way for our opponent to stop us from getting 5 instances of 3 damage, or if we play 3 eyes, 6 instance damage, which is really good, efficient finisher for a deck that like is just, you know, you have all these heals. You can play as lame and defensive as you want, and then just go for it when you have to. Any other thoughts on the finishing package?
It's very light compared to the soccer.
Yeah.
So it made the most sense to play this one along with the Saki. And plus their trigger just helps you loop Saki more.
The pants just helps you get the choice in the hand.
Exactly, yeah. It just kind of all happens to fit very nicely together.
You only need like 5-6 stock to go off, and you don't even need both the eyes in hand, right? Like one can be engraved, you can clock one, and then the Junko summons one, and then you only have to have 2 cards and a climax in hand to go off, which is
it's not difficult.
Yeah, you can basically do the ideal finisher board, which is 2 eyes and a Junko. You almost never triple eye because sets these days are so threatening with their defensive counters that you basically always have to have this Junko down to get it off, which is why we're playing 2 instead of just 1 as like a tech for those decks, because those decks are so prevalent right now that you're basically going to need it in every game to make sure that your opponent can't screw with you. So we got to play into it a lot harder. So you're going to see that like Junko II board basically every game out of this deck. It's really easy to put together.
Now, Carmen,
yes.
What if you happen to have 2 more stock and
wow.
your opponent has a few cards in their waiting room?
Wow, so you can play the Tai Humio. So if the local date is March 8th and both you and your opponent are physically in the Saga Prefecture, this gets an extra 10k power. So if you're playing in Japan and it's March 8th and you're in the Saga Prefecture, this is a 2,500, which is pretty cool.
It's a 20,000.
Yeah, 20,500. I can't math.
No, you're good.
But you know, that effect will never come up for any of us for the most part. Maybe if you're lucky enough to have this effect go off, post it in the comments. Post like picture proof that you were there and I was in the Saga Prefecture and I got this card off. That'd be awesome. But she doesn't lose any power for that. That is just a flavor effect, which is really cool. It's an on play. You rest one of your standing characters. It can be any character, including herself. Your opponent chooses a climax in their waiting room and then returns all other cards to their deck. So it's a Fumio for 1. And then it also has this other effect, which has been pretty common in these newer sets. It's like a power crept Asana's commanding strength. So when you attack, you pay 1, ditch any card, and then you choose up to 3 characters and they get 500 power and 1 soul. So you can't stack soul on multiple characters, like on the same character multiple times, but you can not give soul to some lanes and give soul to other lanes. So you can set up side attacks or push for extra damage if your opponent is out, especially if you Fumioed them for a lot of clean cards. It's like a way to make up lost ground. This is your main decompression tool. Zombieland doesn't really have access to stock swap. I don't think they have access to stock swap at all, actually.
They don't have stock swap, no.
Yeah, so this is your main decompression tool. So you're going to see this in basically every Zombieland deck, and this deck is no exception. You got to have some way to put your opponent on edge. And I think the fact that on her own, she like decompresses decompresses your opponent and then pumps soul can be really nasty. It can be like a 1-card win con if your opponent like puts themselves in a bad game state, which is really cool. I've had a lot more respect for that third line of decks the more that I've played Hololive with like the Rushia and the Marine.
Yep, I had the same experience with that card.
Yeah, you can like really get people with that. So just having both the decompression and that line of tech on the same card has been really, really nasty. And I think that brings us just to the climax lineup. Choice pants. The pants helps us get our choice to do more Sakis. Like we said, we want to loop the combo as many turns as possible to break our opponent's board and mill through our deck, always putting us in a good deck state while breaking our opponent's strategy is really, really awesome. Choice is always good for just shoring up a deck that wants to spend stock, which is any deck that has a brainstorm. So choice is pretty good. It's like bag, but good.
Yep, sounds right.
And here's the deck laid out again. Not very many one-ofs at all. It's really just the 2 zeros, which one of them's like a little bit of extra climax assurance. It could be a 2-of. You could take probably the Sakura if you don't have as much standby. The Sakura level 0 down. Throw up another climax swap if you needed it. The Saki's only for matchups where they have tap counter or money counter. So you go out and get that and hold it for those games. Only one of the anti-change counter. Sort of pick it up when we can. It's not our go-to strategy. It's always a good threat. Have a defensive counter, and then one of the tie just to have access to some decompression. Other than that, the deck is pretty, consistency focused. All 4-ofs, 3-ofs, 2-ofs. We have a directed strategy that we want to do every turn, so we're going to play into that as hard as possible. Any other thoughts on the deck part before we close it up here?
It plays a lot of Saki cards, and that makes me happy.
I love Saki. Yeah, Saki is also my favorite character. That had nothing to do with us playing this and not the Sakura deck, right? Absolutely nothing. It was all a completely objective choice.
Yeah, I think that when these cards are getting shown and the Saki level 1 combo was shown, I was like, oh shit, I love Saki. Oh shit, this card's awesome.
Yeah, I had a very similar thought process. So, yeah. So to close it out here, this is the same slide we put at the end of all our videos. We talk about the Discords and Facebook things every time. I don't really want to talk about that. What I do want to talk about is Weiss Fight. If you want to try this deck and you're like just sort of dipping your toes into Japanese, you love Zombieland Saga, didn't get announced for English, so oh, I really want to try it, but I'm not used to JP. Hop on Weiss Fight. Weiss Fight is an online Weiss Schwartz simulator that runs in your browser. No need to install anything. You hop on Encore Decks. You can take our link from the description, grab that, make an account on Weiss Fight, plug that link in, and you can be playing the deck against anyone in the world, like instantaneously. And all the translations are on there, so you don't have to like have Heart of the Cards or Encore Decks open on another monitor on your phone or something like that. It's all baked right into the app. All the translations, which are from Little Akiba, shout out to them, since they make their translations freely available. We were able to put that into Weiss Fight for everybody so that they are able to play Japanese sets without having to write French translations, and it's really, really cool. So if you want to try the set before you buy or just dipping your toes into Japanese, please check out Weiss Fight. There is a Discord if you want to give feedback to the dev. They're really responsive about adding new features and making the app as good as it can be. And there's a Patreon if you want to further support it as a community project. They're always looking to make it better and better. So if you want to check that out, all those links will be in the description. Anything you want to shout out for before you get out of here?
I just want to really reiterate that the Weiss Fight dev is a really great guy. He's doing his absolute best to make this platform, as good as it possibly can be. And even now, there's still like, you'll either find random people playing on there, or you can just hit up some of your friends and play a few games on Weiss Fight whenever you want.
Yeah, there's a text chat in there as well, so you don't need to like be on voice chat or anything to play. It's very similar to like Dueling Book or something like that. It's fully functional as it is as a standalone. All right, and with that, Pittsburgh Weiss Schwartz signing off. Thank you for being on, Paro, and we'll see you again next time.
Thank you. Later, guys.